All right, we're rocking and rolling. Chris,
Yeah,
great.
man. I'm excited to be on your podcast because I was literally just listening to you interview Nathan Hedge the other day.
Yeah, he's a legend. He's very entertaining. A complete surfing evergreen. Yeah, he was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it was a good one.
tell us a little bit about your surfing journey. So you grew up in Santa Barbara, and were you
I
surfing
did.
from a young age?
No, it's so funny or not funny. It's kind of like it's like I don't have a lot of regrets in life, but this is definitely one of them. I mean, I grew up in Santa Barbara and spent my whole life as a kid going to like Rincon and stuff. And I'd never surfed. I body surfed, I boogie boarded, I was a sponger for sure. Spent all summer long at the beach and somehow never wound up with a surfboard in my hand until I was in no use for a name a few years later, like in my mid 20s. And I was living in San Francisco, which is really cold, the beach up there. But yeah, that was sort of my real introduction to surfing. I look back on my childhood. I just got, how the fuck did that happen? I
But
mean, I
did
skateboarded. You know what I mean? It's like why did I never surf? I don't know.
I mean it was right then that would have been in the height of like Tom Curren era in Santa Barbara. Were you aware of Tom Curren at the time? Was he a
Oh,
presence?
for sure. Yeah, I remember like my gym teacher in ninth grade, like uh, to like singing Tom Curren's praises. You know what I mean? Like of course everybody knew who Tom Curren was, but he would have been a couple of years older than me, and in just a different social stratosphere or whatever. So, and I think by the time I ever really became really aware of him, he would already maybe already been in France by then. I don't know. Yeah.
But you did have one of your solo tracks in his movie Free Scrubber, which would have been kind of a buzz.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was great. It's funny because I sent some music to Vaughn Deadly, who I'm sure you're friendly with,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh, hey, could we use one of these tracks?" And we're doing this free scrubber extra bits thing. I was like, "Absolutely, man! Nothing would make me happier." That's like ultimate Santa Barbara hometown pride. As a matter of fact, I interviewed Curran recently for this book project that this editor's putting together, and that was really the first time I ever met him. I met him once briefly at a Channel Islands party years ago, but I just drove up to his house and interviewed him, and it was fucking great, and he was super cool, and I got him. He's gonna actually come play with. I do like a Christmas show back in Santa Barbara every year, and he's gonna come play it this year.
Yeah, he's a pretty committed musician. And we did the tour of searching for Tom Curren recently with tracks, and he actually played a couple of his own tracks before each movie showing, which was good.
Yeah, no, he's great. He's really good.
So if you weren't surfing, were you an obsessive guitarist? Like, did you just all day, every
I
day, every spare moment you got? Was that your adolescence?
I would say, I mean, I'm not going to pretend I was the most studious of guitar students or anything, but what I was an absolutely obsessive music fan. Like music was just my whole identity. Whatever it was that I was into was like 150%, and yeah, I mean that like once I started playing guitar, the thing that really kicked it into high gear for me was playing in bands. When I hit high school, like ninth grade, me and some friends put together our first band, and then it was just off to the races. And yeah, so it wasn't like I was sitting in my room all day long practicing scales and modes
Yeah.
and whatever, but we were just playing all the time. I mean, like I look back on being in high school, and it's the reason I didn't graduate from high school, is because we were just like, me and my friends just were, any keg party, any bar gig, anywhere we could play, we would just, would never miss it.
And it was a
And there,
pretty,
and in Santa Barbara, and probably everywhere at that time. I mean, this is a long time ago, but like where I grew up, like there were a lot of there were just a ton of places to play. Every weekend there you could find a keg party. Or there was like some shitty bars and stuff that would let us. And then there was eventually like some of the better clubs around town would let us come open for like real like touring acts and stuff. But yeah, it just seemed like everybody had a band back then.
there was a pretty vibrant Californian punk scene at that stage. I'm guessing, you know, that was kind of like right in the midst of it all when that was kicking off.
Well, in high school, I mean, really, like, I mean, I played in some punk rock bands and stuff, but like, really, I was like totally into like rock and roll music.
Yeah.
You know, that was like, I wanted to be in like Guns N' Roses and move to LA and do that whole thing, you know. And then eventually I did, and by the time I got to LA, like that whole scene had kind of died off. So, you know, it was sort of in that like pre-alt rock moment of like what's gonna happen, and the last thing's kind of over, and the next thing hasn't quite revealed itself, you know, but it's sort of bubbling up, and then you had all the like, you know, Bad Religion and Pennywise and NoFX, and you know, all that whole thing was coming up too, you know.
So who were you desperate to go and see? Like, who did you want to go and see when you're an adolescent, when you're a teenager? Who did you most want to go and see?
I mean, yeah, I'm not like, when I was really young, I just loved everything that, you know, whatever, Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and all that sort of stuff. But when I started going to shows, I pretty quickly, like I started going to shows in 8th grade and pretty quickly got into like a lot of the heavy metal stuff that was like more like in the clubs at that point. And I had a couple of friends that would drive me and some of my friends down to LA, and we'd go see, you know, Armored Saint and Keel and stuff like that, and go see them at the country club or the Roxy or the Whiskey or where, you know, wherever, like, and then that whole scene kind of shifted, and then like the Guns N' Roses, Poison, Jet Boy, Faster Pussycat thing happened, and we would just go see those bands any chance we could, you know, and wherever, the Troubadour, the Whiskey, stuff like that.
So in a parallel universe, I read that you might have actually gone on to be a pro soccer player, which is a long way from being a rock star.
Yeah, that is a long-standing internet rumor that has no truth. And I tell you, because I play soccer, and I mean, I do play soccer, and I played when I was a kid, but I never was really any good. And then when I started playing guitar when I was like 11, I pretty much quit playing sports of any kind. But it always makes me giggle because that surfaces every now and again, and I just think like, God, the people that like, in every pickup game that I play at, I'm the worst guy on the pitch. Every time. I mean, I'm enthusiastic, and that's about all I got, you know. And I just makes me laugh, like when I think like some of the folks I play with that are pretty good, they must just be like, that Yahoo was going to be a pro soccer player? I don't think so.
Yeah. But you can tell them that you got to play at Wembley Stadium in front of 170,000 people.
Yeah, just not kicking a ball. Yeah.
How was that? But I mean, that was a huge gig. What was that buzz like? It's very few people get to experience something on that scale.
I mean, we've had the pleasure of getting to do things like that, you know, over the years, where you're in front of like some really crazy big crowds, and it's wild, you know. And a place like Wembley, it's like, of course, you go into that knowing the history of all the amazing shows that have happened there, even though technically we played the new Wembley, not the old Wembley where all that shit actually happened. But whatever, still, you know, it's just like you step out on that stage and the crowd's just like a fucking rocket engine in your face, you know. So it's fun.
So you talked about your kind of eclectic musical influences growing up, and that's really reflected in your latest album, your solo album, Lost at Sea. It's kind of like there's punk, there's country, there's rock. It doesn't slot into any easy genre, this one.
Yeah, and that's sort of every time I make a solo record, I feel like they get a little more that way. You know, it's a little more of like all the different stuff that I sort of love and have grown up listening to. I think as a musician, you are what you eat. You know, there's no way around it. The things that you listen to your whole life are just going to come out in the way you play. So, you know, country music is huge influence on me, but then like, you know, so is Thin Lizzy, you know, and so that's where you get some of those like harmonized guitar solo things and shit like that. You know what I mean? And I just try not to put any restraints on anything, and just, you know, what we went, like I wrote a bunch of songs sort of leading up to making that record, and then we whittled it down to the ones that we recorded, and but I just never I never think of it as like, oh, I have to, like, this is my country thing, so I have to keep it country or any of that stuff. I just whatever song sort of feels good and sounds good and gets your toes tapping. And really, like nowadays, like country music as a genre is like such a it's not like you know, they're like the way that classic country sort of worked melodically and the chord structures and stuff is totally different now. You know, country music now, modern country music is much closer in structure to just rock music or pop music, or, you know, it's all kind of similar. And then there's like these sort of stylistic things in there, and a lot of it's lyrical and the instrument choices and stuff.
So will you get an invite to one of the big country festivals or not? Is it that
We'll
far
see.
down that genre? Yeah.
We'll see. Hold on one sec. My cat is like howling to come in the room. Hold on one second.
Okay, go get the cat.
Oh, buddy. I mean, come on. How could you say no to this guy? Look at this guy. He's fucking enormous.
Oh, classic.
Yeah.
So how does it work with you with that creative process with a solo career as well? Like you obviously play with the Foo Fighters in the band, but it's just this other part of your brain's bubbling over going, really want to go and do some of my own stuff. You know, is that always working on the side?
I mean, I think you never really turn off the little songwriter thing in your brain. And, you know, I always have like, I'm always writing, jotting notes down or recording stuff into my phone, or sort of as you're out there in the world doing other stuff. But, you know, with this album in particular, I wrote a lot of these songs in 2020 when we were, when everybody was off the road because of COVID, and just found myself at home for this extended period of time in a way that had never happened, you know, in my whole adult life, especially since I ever had kids. You know, I'd never had that kind of time at home. So it's kind of what my days would turn into. You know, I'd wake up and I'd get my kids up and get them situated with online school or whatever. And then at a certain point, I just pretty much every day go over to my studio and sort through ideas. And sometimes I'd write with other people on Zoom, and sometimes I'd make demos, and sometimes I'd just sit and write by myself, you know, and just did that. I wasn't even really thinking about making a record, honestly. I was just wanted to write some songs and just had all these ideas, and it had been just about long enough from the last solo record that it was kind of, it is like you said bubbling up, and that does kind of happen. It's like, you know, you go, for me, I'm not one of those people that just writes complete songs every single day, like, you know, like Music Row style. I tend to write a bunch in chunks, you know, and then I'll be busy doing other stuff. And maybe that's like touring, or maybe that's working on setting up, you know, putting a record out. And there's a lot of like logistical shit that you have to do. And you know, basically manage myself with my solo thing. So like when I'm like working on putting an album out, I'm not really sitting down and writing songs all the time. Or if I'm touring a bunch, I'm also not doing that, because it's sort of, there's only so many hours in the day. And, you know, you sort of, your music energy gets used up at a certain point. So it usually does kind of come in blocks for me, and I'll sit and sort of go through my notes and go through old like recordings I've accumulated and see if anything still gets my ear interested. And then usually once you start doing that, for me, that's when like new ideas start to pop up. And then you sort of forget about the old ideas you had on your phone, and you're just kind of, you know, one thing leads to another.
So as a musician, where does the real sugar hit come in? Is it playing live? Is it like playing a chord and going, damn, that's a good chord? Is it writing a song and thinking that's like, or is it, I guess you have to like enjoy all elements, you know, but is there one for you that stands out more than the others?
I mean, if I had to pick one, it's probably playing live. It's, you know, that interaction with the crowd is always great. That's the biggest rush, I think. But writing songs and recording songs, making records is great. You know, I love that thing. I love writing, and I love making records, and I love playing live. I don't much care for everything else. You know what I mean?
But that's why I think that's why people want to become rock stars, don't they? Because so that's just pretty much all they have to do.
Yeah. Here, I'm shifting this because I'm now, the sun's moving into my face.
Actually, it's a funny question. Like probably people go, oh, you know, Chris Shiflett, he's a rock star. They probably get a little bit anxious around that and think, wow, do you get surf struck by anybody? Is there anybody that you go, wow, that's, Kelly Slater, he's the same
Oh
age as you.
man.
Are you in awe? You
Oh,
find
big
yourself
time.
getting a little bit in awe
Big
of
time. So
people?
we just Foo Fighters just did a show up at the County Bowl up in Santa Barbara, which that's where I grew up, and the County Bowl is like, one of the best venues to me in the world. And I've only ever played it one other time, and that was years ago with Foos, but I actually saw Foo Fighters there before I was in the band. But so anyway, so we played up there, and it was the hometown show, and I was just super excited for it anyway. But then a friend of mine connected me with Bobby Martinez ahead of that show, who is also from Santa Barbara, but I'd never met him before. So we connected and went surfing one morning, and we're out there, and Connor and Parker Coffin were out there that day, and I saw Dane Reynolds in the parking lot. You know what I mean? Like it was like just this like crazy super set. It was probably just another day in the life for them, but for me, like just seeing all those cats like in the flesh was fucking super cool. And so Bobby came to the show, and Connor came to the show, and like I said, I had met Curran kind of recently. So he came to the show, and Timmy Curran came to the show, and we just had like there was like a fucking some real 805 surf royalty, in the house. It was yeah, I get a little starstruck around all those cats, but like especially Tom Curran. You're like, fuck, man, it's Tom Curran.
Yeah, he still has that effect on everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So how does surfing fit into the framework for you on a lifestyle basis? What role does it play?
I mean, I live in LA. I live pretty close to the beach. I surf as much as I can. We've been gone a lot this year, and you know how that goes. You're always gone when the good swell comes, and all your friends are like, dude, where are you? And you're like, I'm in fucking Kansas, man. I don't want to hear about how great the surf is at Third Point,
So where's your go to at home? Is it Rincon? I know you can't give away your secret spots, but
yeah, I mean, I usually I live pretty close to Malibu, so I surf up there. Surf, it's either Third Point or Zuma, or
okay. So you're not Santa Barbara these days. You're more like downtown.
No, but I get up to Santa Barbara as much as I can, and if I see that there's going to be some waves up there, I'll try to shoot up there and surf Rincon or Hammonds or wherever. We've had some fun surfs on the road. Recently, I surfed Half Moon Bay. I never surfed up there before. That was super fun. We got it on like a fun kind of mellow day.
Yep. Mavericks. You paddled out at Mavericks.
Not so much.
Not so much Mavericks, but Half Moon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you think of Half Moon Bay, of course you think of Mavericks, but like it was we were not at Mavericks, and it was not Mavericks-esque. But it was fun nonetheless. And but we were just down in Texas for like a week and a half, and we had a couple of days off. So there's one other guy on our crew that surfs, my buddy Timmy, and we drove over to Waco and surfed the Waco surf. Was fucking unreal, dude. It was really fun. Like it's the interesting thing, because I've actually surfed urban surf down in Melbourne last time we were down there, and then I've surfed the Surf Ranch a few times, and it's really interesting with all those wave pools, because you see the footage and it looks great when you see the footage, but it when you're in the pool, it feels so much punchier and faster and better than you sort of expect it to, because you look at the pictures and you're like, yeah, it's like a shoulder highway, whatever, and then you get in the pool and it's like zippy and fast, and you're just working your ass off. I mean, they're all the common thread between all of them is like that they all kick your ass in a way that you don't expect, because it's not surfing in the wild. It's like we surfed for 4 hours in Waco and got like 50 waves. So by the end of it, you're like, I don't want any more waves, man. Make it stop. You know what I mean? And that never fucking happens in the wild. At least not for me. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, if you think about how much time you're actually up on a wave, if you're out for an hour or so, it's like, it's not that much time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the full guitar solo in the pool. You got a lot of time where you're riding.
Yeah.
And so have you ever like missed band practice or showed up late for a gig or just been totally floored from a surf?
I remember when we played the Sydney Opera House years
Oh yeah,
ago when we were doing those like acoustic shows.
yeah, little venue on the
And
harbour. Yeah, no.
yes, yeah, you may have heard of it.
Yeah,
And Timmy Curran was opening up for us.
yeah,
And he just happened to be down there. He was going to be down there, I think, anyway, on like the Hurley Rip My Shred Stick tour.
yeah.
And so you had like Machado and Pat O'Connell and Timmy Curran, all those guys were kind of around. And I would just go and wherever they were surfing in the day, I would just go follow them around. And yeah, but I distinctly remember sitting on stage while we were playing those shows, and I was like sunburned and had sand in my ears and was tired and yeah, like stifling, like I hope the crowd can't see me yawning. It's not because I'm not having a good time. I just was up early and spent all day at the beach. You know what I mean? I don't think I've ever missed practice, but it's, certainly had some sleeping
You've played
gigs.
surfed out. You've played in that surfed out sort of
You know what I
state.
mean? But I like the way that feels. To me, that's a good feeling. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If I'm kind of like a little like sun, burnt when I'm playing a show, like that's a good place to be.
Do you ever get that surf epiphany moment with it when it comes to writing music or something like, everything's just decluttered and you go, bang, you get an idea. Does it actually help in the creative process?
I don't know if it's ever helped like that. I mean, I think maybe the connection there, the similarities, maybe like there are moments when you're playing where you're kind of out of your head, where you're just like really in the moment and just kind of doing it. Because most of the time live, like, I wish I was in that state more. But a lot of the time you're like, okay, here comes the second verse and I got to hit that pedal and then I got to sing that backup part. And then there's that part that's kind of, you're sort of thinking about everything that's coming, but there are moments live where you're really just in it and not thinking about it. And that's, a similar state of mind to what it feels like to surf, I think, But really, I mean, I always say that, like, to me, music and surfing have nothing in common, because music to me is like wrapped up in money and ego and all that. You know what I mean? Because that's what I do for a living, and I don't mean that as a negative. It's just a reality. It's like that's my professional life, and surfing is something I have. My only ambition in surfing is to be a little better than I was the last time, if that's possible, you know what I mean? And it's just purely for the joy of it, and really to disconnect, I like being out there. I don't wear an Apple Watch. I don't want to get emails and phone calls, and, I want to be just away.
So there's quite a few musicians who surf. I think you got like Rob Trujillo from Metallica, Eddie Vedder.
Yeah.
I think Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction likes a paddle. Like, you ever catch up and surf with those guys, or how would you fare in the surf off, the musician surf off?
I surfed with Perry once or maybe twice years ago. I've never surfed with Rob Trujillo or Eddie Vedder, although I know that they do. Yeah, I don't know. I that's a good question. You have a big surf off competition. I remember
at the wave pool, it'd be fun. Yeah.
Oh man, it'd be so fun. Yeah, sign me up. That'd be great, man. Yeah, I remember the singer for Incubus surfing with him at a thing years ago, and he was really good. He'd probably win the contest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with some of the Australian, like Jeremy Oxley from the Sunny Boys? Did you get influenced by the Australian bands at all?
Some, yeah, for sure. I'm not familiar with I don't know that dude.
Jeremy Oxley.
I will.
He was like a
check him
state
out.
champion surfer as well. But yeah, the Sunny Boys are worth a listen.
Oh, a couple of the guys from Switchfoot are ripping surfers for sure.
Yep.
They might win. Who knows? Yeah. It's between them and the singer for Incubus.
Okay, that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
And but yeah, tell us.
I bet Jack Johnson must be really good, right? He grew up on the North Shore.
Jack Johnson's great. He's great.
Yeah, maybe he wins it.
Well, yeah, there's a competition. There's scope for a surfers. I mean, the surfers themselves have put together a band, but I think there's probably scope for the musicians of surfers to put together some sort of super band option there, definitely.
That's not fair. You can't have Tom Curran in the competition. No
Yeah,
chance.
no, definitely not. It's yeah, but tell us a little about your Australian influences. Like, did our music kind of come into the picture for you at all?
Well, I mean, without a doubt, the biggest one for me, of course, would be AC/DC. I mean,
Yeah,
come on, I'm 52. That's my jam. You know what I mean? Both Angus and Malcolm, I would consider big influences. As far as other stuff, I mean, it seemed like when I was a teenager, there was like Australian culture got very trendy for a while in America, you know, in a couple of different ways, but certainly a lot of the music that came out of Australia, like In Excess, Midnight Oil, who was that? What was that other band? Icehouse, weren't they Australian?
yep, yep.
Yeah. Were Crowded House both New Zealanders and Australians in that band?
Yeah, more New Zealand, but they're one of those ones that gets claimed by Australia.
Well, there was like one Australian in the band, wasn't there?
I think so.
I
Yeah.
don't remember.
The Finn brothers, yeah. They had split ends
Yeah.
before. They had split ends before they had Crowded House.
Yeah.
Which is
So I mean,
actually-
some of those bands, like In Excess, was fucking massive in America. You know, in the 80s, massive.
I think
you
Men at
couldn't
Work-
get away from.
Men at
Work.
Work Men at Work was huge, yeah.
too. Yeah.
But you're out in.
I mean, truth be told, I'm not going to pretend that I was like buying those records or anything, but like,
Yep.
you know, but everything that was on MTV, I would pretty much consider an influence because I would just have that on all day long.
Yeah.
So, which was kind of great because like, you know, my musical tastes were fairly narrow when I was a kid and really through MTV got turned on to tons of stuff that I didn't even realize that it was getting in there, you know?
Yeah. It's just interesting because I guess we absorb so much American culture, particularly in that era, because we were turning on MTV, and it's curious to see how much we influence the other way. Surfing is certainly one of the things where we have an influence as Australians, and probably music, where it goes back the other way a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. But so you are out in Australia later in the year. I think you're touring solo and you're touring with the Foo Fighters. Are you looking forward to that trip?
Yep. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, it's always the best place to tour. It's just super fun.
Are you bringing a board, or are you going to just get a board when you're here?
I don't know. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, I've done it both ways. Usually, the last few times we've been down there, I've just picked up a board when I'm down there. So I'll probably do that because it just gives you a good excuse to go get a new board. You know,
What do you ride? What's like? Are you a mid-length guy? Is it like a standard short board? What's your go-to?
I do have a couple of mid lengths and I like them, although it's not mostly what I ride. I usually ride more so short boards, like you know, I need a new quiver is what I need. All my boards are pretty beat up right now, but I got teenage kids and they just fuck your boards up. Every time I go surfing, I pull my board out. I'm like, why didn't they tell me they broke a fin off? Like, you got to tell me that before I get to the beach. But my go-to boards in recent years have been like the Paizel Phantom.
Yep.
I've gotten a lot of wear and tear on. I bought I've got both the Neckbeard and the Fishbeard. I like both those boards. I bought a free scrubber actually when they put out that free scrubber board, you know, the twin fin.
Twin fin, yeah.
And I actually got it a little bit like bigger than my normal shortboard, which I kind of like. It's kind of like it kind of made me realize like, I think I'm riding like my boards are too small because this is quite a bit bigger and I'm catching every way. You know what I mean? I was like, this is amazing. But then when I surfed with Bobby Martinez the other day, he gave me one of those Bobby quads.
Oh yeah.
And I'm only taking it out once. I took it out on like a fun day at Third Point, and that thing is a fucking rocket ship, man. It's crazy. Super fun.
So it sounds like you've almost got as many surfboards as you do. How many guitars have you got? Have you got more guitars than I assume you got more guitars than surfboards?
Many, many, many more guitars than surfboards. But my quiver's not too bad. I picked up a really good JS last time. I feel like that was the last time, or maybe a couple tours ago, down in Australia. What was I forget the name of the model, but it's really good. That's a great board too. Zippy little short board.
Yeah, obviously those Foo Fighters tracks featured so prominently in the Jack McCoy movies,
Yeah.
documentary and Blue Horizon. You know, some of those just
Yeah.
classic Foo Fighters power ballad, which I assume you played a part in writing the chords for and shaping. Like that was
Well,
you got an influence on those.
Documentary was that's all the songs in that one are from the second record. So that was before my time, but yeah,
Right.
I mean that is like so classic, you know. I think it's what is it like Everlong is in that one and maybe one of the other ones, I forget. But yeah, and then when Jack used All My Life, I think is in Blue Horizon.
Yeah.
And that one I was on, so that one I was fucking stoked. And that would have been around the time that I got to know Jack, actually. So maybe just after that movie came out, I
Is it
think.
cool to sit in the cinema on a big screen and see the surfing and hear your track? I mean, it's a different, a different way of experiencing the music, I guess.
Oh, it's fucking great. Yeah, so cool. Yeah, right, like it reminds me of that scene in Big Wednesday where they go to see the surf movie in the old,
Yeah.
in the old movie theater. It's great. Love it.
And I guess, in the same way that you're kind of a surfer on the side, there's a lot of surfers that play guitar, just they mess around with guitar. What are some basic tips for your average surfer who likes to strum? What's your advice? They just like you wanting to
Ooh.
get a little bit better at surfing. What's some realistic advice for you kind of
Okay, I've
strummer?
got the best advice for anybody wanting to be a guitar player. If you're like, wanting to learn like, Western pop music type stuff,
Yeah.
would be the way that I learned how to play guitar, which was my guitar teacher taught me the cowboy chords, all the sort of root position chords, and like I think like a pentatonic scale. And then he made me learn Beatles songs. Just get a beginner Beatles songbook, and through Beatles songs, you will learn music theory that you don't even realize you're learning, and you'll learn how chords move around and work together, um, and and that's the best thing you can do, in my opinion. On top of which, right now, it's like it's the greatest time to learn anything because you can just go on YouTube and if you want to be a guitar player, you can just type in any song and you'll find 100 people explaining how to play it. And they will all explain it a little bit wrong, but that's okay, you know?
But you'll get it.
And
You
the
get it.
other thing, well, the other thing nowadays too is the Zoom lesson. I mean, you can take lessons I took some lessons during COVID from Brent Mason. He's like one of the greatest fucking guitar player session cats in Nashville ever. And I was like tooling around online. I don't even remember how I figured it out. I think I wound up on his website somehow. I was like, what? I can take a lesson from Brent Mason. And I just emailed him. And next thing you know, I'm taking a fucking guitar lesson from Brent Mason. Amazing. Like, that like, can you imagine? Like, I think about that. Like when I was a kid, like if I could have like taken a guitar lesson from fucking Randy
Yeah.
Rhoads or something,
Yeah, it's a
just
surf
like,
lesson from
it's
Tom Curran
crazy.
when you're a kid, like that's
Right. You
kind of
know what
like,
I
yeah.
mean? Yeah. Yeah. So that like it's never been easier to have access to the knowledge to do it, but the nuts and bolts of learning are always the same. Start slow and just do it a lot.
I guess it's interesting in that kind of like, you're 52 now, and the idea of being able to learn and improve well into your 50s with something, that concept, rather than that idea with surfing and guitar, like, I'm 25 now, I've learned everything. Like, now I'm just going to play what I know, but you're still learning and improving, I guess.
I mean, I'm absolutely, that's like, one of the biggest motivators for me is to always be kind of woodshedding on something. I think, I don't know what it's like for you. The older I get, the more sort of you realize like your time on this earth is finite, and you're on the wrong end of that, and you start to realize like there's shit that you've always wanted to do you're never going to get to, so I'm trying to jam it all in
What's
as
right
much
up?
as I can.
What's up here on the bucket list? What's sitting right up there right now? What's, like kind of.
Ooh. Oh man, so much. I mean, just I mean, to put that into perspective, I took 2 different guitar lessons from 2 different people this week.
Yep.
That in some very different genres than I'm used to playing in, and just love it. I think that's just like the funnest thing in the world. But as far as like what's on the bucket list, I've never been on a fucking boat trip.
Okay.
I want to go on a boat trip.
Yep.
Take me on a boat trip.
Yep.
I mean, I've been offered a million times over the years. This is like, I'm not going to whine about what I do for a living as being, an obstacle to anything, but it is an obstacle to fucking boat trips. It's what I found every time one of these trips comes up that my friends are going on. It's always in the middle of me being on the road. And that is the funny thing with being a working musician. Like I can't plan something for next year because I don't know what next year looks like.
So it's not organized that far ahead. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, elements of it are, but not the whole thing, and so yeah, that's something I want to do bad with my kids before they get much older.
Who's on the trip in the ideal scenario? Who's on the boat?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, I would say I would list a bunch of pro surfers, but I'll tell you the problem, and maybe
we can pick one.
I mean, I don't know what level you surf at. I'm guessing you fucking rip, but I don't. And so what happens? You're like so excited to go. Anytime you get the opportunity to go surf with like a bunch of pro dudes, you're like, it's gonna be fucking rad. But those guys all surf waves that I can't fucking surf. You know what I mean? Not all the time, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you'd want to be on a boat trip with a bunch of high level pro surfers because they're going to like want to go surf over like razor sharp reef and this, 2 inches of water and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I think,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So I think like really it would be like me and a couple of my surf friends and all our kids. That would be ideal.
Yeah. In the mental-wise, you think you're talking like mental-wise Indonesia.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Well, I think you should make that happen sooner than later. I think you can get that.
I know. Well, if you've got any good suggestions, different boats or whatever, please shoot them to me in an email when we get off the interview.
Definitely. Look, Chris, it's been good chatting. We're looking forward to seeing you out here later in the year. Hopefully you get a couple of surfs in. Have you got a wave in mind that you really want to on that bucket list in Australia?
Oh yeah, I mean I've got surf friends kind of all over, so definitely like Gold Coast and Byron, and I love getting up to the northern beaches when I'm in Sydney, getting out to like Bells and Winky Pop and all that, when we're down that way. Out in Perth, some people. So it's kind of all over. I mean, that's the beauty of touring Australia. You wind up having a couple days off in pretty much everywhere you go. Definitely want to go hit urban surf again. I mean, that was a blast last time. So hopefully we'll get to do that. And yeah, just try to do them all.
And gig wise, I think your solo gigs are sold out already. Is that right?
Yeah.
And yeah. So that's
pretty
good to know. You're going to any chance of opening up another couple or not? How does that work?
I don't think so. Cause I would love to, like, it was great we sold them out quick and that was awesome. I would love to come back like next year or something with my band and do like a more, extensive run of shows would be awesome.
Well, we hope you can pull that off and the boat trip. And I listened to the album yesterday, Lost at Sea. I really enjoyed it. It's a real combination of different sounds. And I liked having a little bit of country. It was good.
Awesome, man. Well, when we're down there, let's get in the water. Hopefully it'll line up with some swell.
All right. We'll organize you aboard. Okay.
See you, Chris. There you go. I like it. Awesome, Thanks, man. Take care.
Bye. Bye.